Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Duffy. I'm Senior Vice Chancellor at the Ohio Department of Higher Education. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for FAFSA 21 Roundtable. With us today are State Superintendent Paolo DeMaria, Chancellor Randy Gardner, the immediate past President of the Ohio School Counselor Association, Michelle Grimm, the Executive Director of the Ohio Technical Center Division of the Ohio Association of Career Technical Superintendents, Mr. Bill Bussey, and Marion Harding High School teacher, Olivia Davis. Our format today will be 30 minutes of roundtable discussion from our panel regarding the importance of FAFSA completion for the state of Ohio, the ways in which our state is investing in FAFSA completion currently with some gear money that we have flowing, some facts and figures on Pell across post-secondary education pathways in the state of Ohio, and the beginning of a deeper engagement with Ohio school counselors, principals, and superintendents, helping us as a department, both higher ed and K-12, shaping the direction as we form professional development and data system upgrades that support FAFSA completion, among other efforts. This is a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted online later at the Ohio Department of Higher Education website. Here to welcome us and kick things off is State Superintendent Paolo DeMaria.
Mike, thank you so very much. And I'm really excited to be with everybody today to talk about this very important subject relative to helping more and more students complete the FAFSA form as a component of helping them make great choices to explore exciting opportunities in post-secondary education. Many of you are aware that in Ohio, several years ago, we adopted a strategic plan for education called Each Child, Our Future. And in that plan, while the plan really impacts the K-12 system, it really places the K-12 system sort of in that broader continuum of the state's sort of talent development and educational, the totality of Ohio's education system. And so our vision in Each Child, Our Future is to ensure that students are challenged, prepared, and empowered for future success. And then in the goals section of the strategic plan, we talk about what success looks like. And there are a variety of components, but one of the most significant ones is that a student 1 year after completing high school is enrolled and succeeding in a post-high school learning experience. We also talk about, enlisting and succeeding in the military. We talk about having a self-sustaining, life-sustaining job and pursuing a vocation. And in each of those categories, it really implies that there are multiple pathways, multiple choices for students. But we always know that in each of those pathways, more learning leads to more opportunities and leads to the potential for greater career acceleration, more lifetime earnings, and higher quality of life. The data bear this out, whether you're looking at the stuff coming out of Georgetown, whether you're looking at things reported in various, financial media, this idea of the more you know, the more you learn, the more likely it is that you will have a great life ahead of you. And that has implications not only for individuals, but for communities, for states, for the nation. It also has implications for equity, because one of the key focus points, if you look at another part of the strategic plan, which is our key principles, equity is one of those. And the motivation behind equity is making sure we are deliberate about ensuring each student has an opportunity to be successful. And what does that look like? Now, the one thing I remind people is that the obligation of the K-12 system doesn't stop on graduation day. We have an obligation to work with our counterparts, both in terms of sort of pre-K education, even before pre-K education starts. That's why we have collaborations with the Department of Health and their Help Me Grow programs and those sorts of things. But then also with our post-secondary educational partners. I'm pleased to be on this call with the Chancellor and other representatives of Ohio's post-secondary education system, because we each kind of hold one of the key pieces and parts of this success strategy, right? Our obligation in the K-12 system is to make sure our students are ready and prepared to succeed in those post-high school pursuits, right? So that's what a lot of our focus is on. How do we make sure students are ready? How do we define ready? What are the course taking requirements? What are the standardized test score requirements? What are the graduation requirements? How do we allow students to demonstrate what they know and can do so that we know they're ready to succeed? At the same time, we look to our post-secondary partners to say they're the ones that are charged with helping students succeed once they get into the post-secondary system, which is the whole. So we have the college readiness agenda and the post-secondary education readiness agenda. They have the post-secondary success agenda. And then we both share this space about post-secondary access, right? How do we make it so that students can in fact access those opportunities? And that's really what this initiative about FAFSA completion is all about. Not only does it emphasize the fact that we have to work in partnership, but we have to work in a way that allows students to engage in the decision-making process with complete information. For those of you who know me, and I know many on this call do, they know that I don't like making decisions without knowing all the facts, having all the information. It drives my staff crazy sometimes, I know. But the reality is when we make decisions without knowing all the facts, we are likely going to make errors in our decisions. And so to me, one of the key motivators to this is how do we make sure people know? When I interact with high school students, whether I'm visiting a high school, visiting a career center, engaging them in other venues, I often say, okay, well, what are you going to do after graduation? And I start this line of discussion because I know what their choices are going to help define who they become and the quality of life that they're going to have and so forth and so on. And a lot of times, if I don't hear them say something about, further learning and their desire to, gain greater knowledge, I'll ask them about what about continuing your education? And a lot of times, and I'm sure you do, get this same kind of answer. The response to why they're not thinking about further learning is, well, my family could never afford it. And the question I always have is, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? And so to me, part of this initiative is really about helping people better understand what the truth is about financial information that's available to them. In fact, one of the interesting things I like to read about is the misperceptions people have about the cost of post-secondary education. What are the options? What are the choices that one brings to that decision? And what are the cost elements? Because there's a lot of misleading information. In fact, I've known a number of people who say, look, if anybody is just looking at the sticker price, it's very misleading. It's just like being on when you're flying an airplane, you can look at all the different people in different seats. Some have paid full fare. Others have, bought their tickets on Priceline, deeply discounted. Others are using their points. There's a whole host of different price tags that are on the exact same flight. And the same is true if you look around a college classroom or a college campus or a career technical center campus. A lot of people are leveraging different aspects of their opportunities and in a way that allows them to maximize the value that they have. So this initiative comes out of this sense that how do we help people really understand? Because ultimately, if they don't understand, their choices are made with less than ideal information, and they end up leaving money on the table. And the state leaves money on the table. You're going to hear some descriptions about just, how much money is involved. And I think those states that have pursued a more aggressive FAFSA completion agenda have seen that not only do those dollars accrue to the state, but they accrue to the individual students and their families in the interest of helping those students pursue further post-secondary education in the interest of advancing their careers, creating a stronger talent pipeline in that particular state, in those particular communities, and helping drive the economic success of both individuals, communities, and the state in general. So I'm delighted to have the partners that are here today to talk about this initiative, to reflect on it. We're here to answer your various questions. It's structured in a way that makes it relatively simple and affords a lot of options and flexibility in terms of people's choices, and I'm excited to be a part of it. Mike, with that, I think, should I turn it back to you or turn it over to Chancellor Gardner?
Chancellor Gardner, would you like to talk about the higher education perspective?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to my Vice Chancellor, Mike Duffy, for your leadership in helping organize this, bring people together, and make sure that we had all the tools we needed today to present this exciting program that will really help build Ohio's future. There are two other people that we would not be here today if but for, at least one not so well, and that's Superintendent DeMaria. Thank you for your leadership, for your team, for your engagement in this. We know that the success of this is going to be a large part about what happens in our school buildings across the state, the interaction with counselors and teachers and school leaders and you. So thank you very much. And following you, I should have known better. Almost all that needs to be said has been said in terms of how important this is, how impactful. what we might be able to do together in working together. So thank you very much for that. The other person is Mike DeWine. Governor DeWine, if not for supporting this package, supporting going to the controlling board with some dollars to assist in organizations throughout the state to assist in this effort, we would not be here today, at least not be in the kind of place we are to really make a difference for families and students. So thanks to the governor for his leadership and for allowing us to be in this place today. The one thing that the governor in the very first cabinet meeting, and Superintendent DeMaria might remember this, the governor asked us to do two things. Number one, listen very carefully to the people of the state, and then act with a sense of urgency. Those were the two. I think about those things every day. When you're appointed by someone and serve at the pleasure, that's what you do. And we've done that. And this one almost deviated a little bit from it. We listened, we knew what the issue was. We got some dollars from the controlling board, and candidly, I wish this was 3 or 4 months ago. I just want to take that straight up. I wish it was 3 or 4 months ago. Timing of this is not necessarily ideal for everyone and we've heard a little bit of that. I just want to take that up very specifically. Here's the thing though about where we are today. It will never get any earlier than this in the history of the world. And so what can we do not only about the future in building out a stronger education system, but what can we do today, tomorrow, next week for the class of 21, for students that are right now in our schools who haven't yet completed the FAFSA, who haven't made a decision yet, who may not know, as Superintendent DeMaria mentioned, that post-secondary opportunity might be far more affordable than what they may think. And you can't give people a solid array of options unless they have more facts, unless they know more about what opportunities and options are. I do want to say that the word opportunity is really key here. We're not trying to inform someone as to what their path ought to be. We're trying to provide them options so that they can find out what their opportunities might be. And a quote from the governor's inaugural message, I think really highlights what he believes about education, about higher education, and about our mission today. And this is Governor DeWine in 2019 on Inauguration Day. Education is the key to equality and opportunity, and everyone, no matter where they were born or who their parents are, deserves the chance to succeed, to get a good paying job, to raise a family comfortably, and to be secure in their future. So this is really not about, it's not about the Department of Education or colleges, universities. It's really not about any of that. We're just hired hands to try to help. But it's really about our state's future and the future of those young people and some not so young people who we need to serve. We need to continue to reach out and support on their education paths. So, and that's one other point I would like to make, that some people have mistakenly thought this was all about just traditional four-year college. I saw one article that actually implied that the FAFSA completion effort was all about four-year college. And in fact, and there are statistics, I'm not sure who's all going to articulate these in what detail, but the fact is those attending Ohio technical centers, adult career centers, community colleges and technical colleges, as well as our four-year public and private institutions, independent institutions, all benefit from those who are eligible for the Pell, up to a maximum award next year of over $6,000, of a maximum award $6,495, I believe. So there are real dollars on the table. Lots of money left, as the superintendent said, on the table if we don't act and we don't provide this opportunity through the FAFSA. So the bottom line for me is we are here today to again, listen to questions, answer questions, be a partner with you, make sure that we provide as much information as we can in terms of what's affordable, what options are for our futures, and assist them in every way possible. And this happens in every school district, in every community in this state. This is not just an inner city issue. It's not just an issue of the rural areas of our state. every single area can benefit. And when we look at opportunities, both in terms of funding, in terms of support for school counselors, for professional development, for data management, knowing where some of the issues are so we can target them and reach in and support students and school districts faster. All of that is part of our thinking. All of that is part of our strategy. And again, we're not going to raise the completion rate to the level that we want to do in 2022 or 23. And we respect the fact that not all the funds that might be provided between now and the end of this fiscal year or to the end of August, all of those won't be expended in precisely the way that you might prefer, because we are where we are. The timing is what it is. But for us to not do everything we can, in my judgment, for the class of 21, for the students that are walking our hallways right now, who have not yet completed the FAFSA or who have not been able to make a decision, they still have some anxiety, they still have questions. We need to reach out to them in the most intensive ways we can to support them, to provide information to them, help them complete the FAFSA, and build a better future. To me, that's the summary of why we're doing what we do, and we will try to be as flexible and helpful as we can, but we need to move. We need to move because the future is staring our young people in the face, and adult learners who we want to bring back into our education system, because we can't do this with just high school graduates. With the number of high school graduates are going down to some degree for about another decade in this state, through no fault of their own. Those are the demographics. So for our state to prosper, we need adult learners. We need our technical centers, our adult career centers, our community colleges, our technical colleges, our four-year independent and public universities. We need all of us pulling together to support whatever path the people of our state choose. So thank you all for being a part of this. We look forward to this journey. It's one of the most important journeys we can make as state leaders in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. I want to make sure that we go to some of the other panelists. We have Michelle, Bill, and Olivia. I want to go to Bill first. I'm going to go a little bit out of order, if that's all right with you, Michelle. But one of the contexts that I want the audience to realize is that nationally, FAFSA completion is 9.1% down year over year as a result of COVID. COVID's disrupting education at the K-12 level. It's certainly disrupting education at the post-secondary level, and we worry about students stopping out and not completing. Bill, perhaps you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing in enrollment at adult career technical centers.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And guys, I'm very excited to be a part of this. I am so glad to hear that the Ohio Technical Centers and career technical education is getting some more focus, because, as you know, over the years, with no intentions, but it appears that colleges and universities are mostly talked about at the high school level, and we need to make sure that our counselors and those school folks are informed and aware of what students can do at the Ohio Technical Centers in a program where they can gain a certificate or a credential and go on to a job, a career, and a successful life. So with that being said, we are very excited about the grants that will provide direct intervention to students, because at the high school level, I think we definitely know that we need more attention to that and more FAFSAs completed. And along with FAFSA completion, counselors need to have more time to discuss the options that high school graduates will have. And also adults, as the Chancellor mentioned, we need to find a way that adults can come back and fill out the FAFSA and enter a college or university, or again, an Ohio Technical Center. And as far as the high school students coming directly out of high school and then into an Ohio Technical Center program, over the years, we've seen a significant number of those grow, and until the pandemic. And of course, with the pandemic, our enrollment is down. As Mike mentioned, we did an average in November compared to the November of 2019, and of the 52 career centers, the enrollment was down 11%. And so that's an average, but it varied from 0% decrease to over 50%. So they're depending upon the community, the region, of the state, as you can imagine. So with that, I think as we look at adults or we look at high schools, we want to be a part of that. And I would like to see the OTCs partner with the ESCs or the college-focused attainment nonprofits that receive these grants. We would like to be a part of that so that we can help inform counselors and those school personnel and others that what OTCs are all about. As far as the enrollment going down, but it's hanging in there now, so to speak. In regards to Pell, the number of students that are enrolled in our programs that are receiving Pell grants, it's very, very high. And I think we need to thank our financial aid coordinators at every one of the OTCs, plus the directors and the other staff, to make sure that those students that enroll complete the FAFSA form. And just to give you an idea of the percentages, I selected some career centers around the state, and Apollo Career Center, which has a lot of successful programs as they all do, but Apollo has 80% of the students that would receive Pell grants. So that means that at least 80% completed the FAFSA. At some of the OTCs, it's a requirement upon enrollment. Another example is Scioto County Career Technical Center. Their percentage of Pell participants in their full-time programs is 86%. As you know, the economically depressed areas would probably have a higher level or a higher percentage of Pell eligible students. Just as an example too, there, Scioto County enrollment is down about 20%. They had their highest enrollment before the pandemic hit in any single year, and now it's down 20%. CTEC of Licking County, of course, that is more closer to central Ohio. Their Pell eligible grants, the number of students that are receiving Pell grants is 50%. Washington County Career Center, 65% of their students receive Pell grant. And I think if you looked at the numbers, and there's several factors why that would happen, but I think that is significantly higher than the universities or the community colleges.
Hey, Bill, I
Yes.
can actually give you the figure on that. At the community colleges across Ohio, the Pell rate eligible students is about 37%. And at the university main campuses, it's about 25.5%. So it does seem, and this is something that you and I discussed over the past kind of 2 business days, that much higher percentage of career technical students are getting Pell. And so counterintuitively, we didn't expect this, but completing the FAFSA and being eligible for Pell may benefit career technical students as much more so than university college bound students, which kind of flips the conversation on its head, the way that people normally think about this. And we wanted to make sure that the audience knew that.
Yeah, you know, and and that's, again, it comes back to the counselors at the high school level, knowing about the credentials that students can get, and actually at the OTC, and if they're in high school at the freshman or sophomore level, they can also look at taking a career tech program and complete that and have a credential that can get them a job at the end of their high school career. I think the other, and I know some of the OTCs work very closely with other agencies such as Ohio Means Jobs and so forth, and they actually, when they work together and partner and enroll students, that's where the FAFSA is completed also. So Mike, I don't know if I got a lot of other things we could talk about. I want
to make sure. Yeah, thank you, Bill. I think we're going to have some Q&A in a little bit. That's going to be the second half of the program. I want to go over to Michelle Grimm from the School Counselor Association, the immediate past president, because we know that really the issue of students stopping their pathway, the disruption with COVID, but in general, trying to maximize opportunity for all students really starts at the field level, that direct intervention with students. And we know that school counselors are really at that ground level. So Michelle, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Mike, thanks for organizing this and reaching out in the conversations that we have had. Also, want to thank Superintendent DeMaria. Appreciate all of his work and partnership with Ohio School Counselor Association. And again, Chancellor Gardner, thank you as well. We've had some very good and rich conversations over the last year, and we greatly appreciate that. And you guys recognizing the importance and some of the work and helping us, what we do. We know that as a school counselor, post-secondary opportunities are critical. Within our scope of practice of academics, career, and social emotional learning, we are trained to work to provide, career education and pathways, and tying right into, the strategic plan for Ohio and addressing the whole child. With that said, looking at the state's $2.85 million investment with professional development and data and kickstarting conversations and so forth, we appreciate that. Just like was previously mentioned, about making sure that, working with the school counselors and us keeping on top and in connection with the career tech and some of those credentials that can be earned in those pathways and everything. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate our partnership with Department of Education, Department of Higher Ed. I really like the piece of the professional development in the data system upgrades. I will say in the past, sometimes the access to the data was not available to school counselors. It was hard and trying to find that information, the portal, and who was designated to be able to access that. So we're really encouraged with those enhancements and so forth. Excited and looking forward to some focus groups and so forth with you guys. We appreciate the statewide effort and the campaign for this target. The one thing, and we just alluded on this, COVID has kind of increased, I guess, some of the pulling at our time and so forth, which is fine. It's not a bad thing. We know that people are talking about mental wellness now, and that's a good thing because we're able to get people help, work with them, and so forth. However, that's taking up some additional time, and we're already kind of stretched thin as it is. I just wanted to mention some of the ratios. The American School Counselor Association ratio, they recommend 250 students to one school counselor. And the Ohio School Counselor Association, we did a little bit of digging and found out that we're about 453 school counselor or students to school counselor in the state of Ohio. And we also know that there are many schools without school counselors, and we have about 384,000 students in Ohio that do not have access to a school counselor. So some of these initiatives that you guys are talking about, we're hoping that this can help with, providing or getting closer to that 250 to 1 recommended ratio. Additionally, our goal as a school counselor, to implement a comprehensive school counseling program, which encompasses all of this: career, the pathways, the internships, the, career tech options, the, working through the FAFSA completion and helping families and students in that role. And also, the college and career and working with the social emotional piece. I guess we're just kind of, talking here and really taking the opportunity and looking at what could really change some things and some direction. We've always talked with our students, about the best career path, what are your strengths, what are the things that you are good at, and really being able to get to a place where we can sit down and have these intentional conversations with students and families and give them all the information. I know Chancellor Gardner and I had spoke before, and it's providing all of the information and then the students and families making an informed decision. And we're there at, with the boots on the ground to help facilitate those things. So looking forward to partnering, working with you guys, providing some of these, opportunities, and real excited, to see where this is going to take us.
Thanks, Michelle. You started talking about opportunity, so I threw up the slide. That's Ohio and FAFSA by the numbers. As the audience can see, we have approximately, and it varies from year to year, 120,000 high school graduating seniors. Currently, we average about 77,000 completing the FAFSA, which is about 64%. That ranks Ohio 15th in the nation, which is not too shabby, but we're 9.1% down nationally. All states are down 9.1%. Ohio's number matches that exactly. Illinois, another state that's near us, is only down 3.3% this current year because of COVID. But when you think about the 43,000 students who do not complete the FAFSA right now, and that 52% of those who complete the form qualify for Pell, and that the average Pell award is $44.18. You heard the Chancellor talk about the highest maximum Pell is in excess of, it's about $6,500, but it's in excess of $6,000. You can see that we have a nearly $100 million opportunity. Now, it may be unrealistic to say we're going to get 100% of students to complete the FAFSA and choose some kind of post-secondary option. We know that Pell funding benefits you not just at a university, but at a community college, at a career technical school, whatever you want to do in life after high school. You can benefit from this. I think one of the voices that we really need to hear from is the student voice and also a teacher voice. We've got Olivia Davis from Marion Harding. My understanding is that Marion Harding is kind of an exceptional school district in the sense that they have very high expectations that every student will do something after graduation. They have a Gear Up program there. Olivia's been involved in that. Olivia, can you talk a little bit about Marion Harding and your experience as a student and now as a teacher?
Yes, of course. So during the call, we've talked a lot about option and opportunity. And I really feel like Marion Harding has done a great job building this culture. And there's this expectation that every student is going to do something after graduation. And Gear Up in our building has really been the support and provided the accountability for this expectation. And I know we've seen this past year, I guess, being a teacher and talking with friends in Gear Up and talking with other teachers and administration, how important structure and routine is for our students, and not having our kids in school and being able to have that direct intervention with the kids has made it really difficult. I know for me, when I was in high school, I graduated in 2015. So that was the first year that we actually had Gear Up in Marion Harding. And I would always get slips from Gear Up, come down to the office so you can fill out FAFSA or we can talk about this. And then if you didn't go, they'd send you another slip, come down to the office so you can fill out FAFSA or check out this. And then next thing you know, they'd come to your classroom and they'd find you and they'd bring you down and really enforce that, I guess, piece of accountability and made sure we all sat down and we talked about options and we talked about opportunity, and whether it was college or going into the workforce or military, we had that support there. And I think that's really important. I was also really grateful to have been an athlete when I was in high school. I did go on to play volleyball at Tiffin University, where I did receive a partial athletic scholarship, which was really great. But I had those high school coaches who helped me. I would come to my track coach's house and we would sit down and we would do my NCAA clearinghouse. And she's like, oh, you need to get this form from your mom. So come back tomorrow night and we'll get that taken care of. And I'd come back the next night and we'd fill out this section. She'd be like, oh, next time bring this. And I had that support system there again. I know I was really grateful to have this support as a student athlete, but I also know that not every student is a student athlete. My brother, for example, he's a year younger than I am. He went on to Ohio State to study social work, and he's currently working on his master's program at Ohio State University. And Gear Up was just a great resource. And I mean, again, I come back to that word support for my brother and helping him get through FAFSA. We come from a single parent home. And my mother, she has a master's degree and she works. But for her filling out FAFSA, she's familiar with it and she has that prior knowledge, but it's just an overwhelming process. So again, just being able to go down to Gear Up and work on that with them was really helpful I actually coach now, so it's really neat to be able to provide that mentorship or that support for my students and my student athletes that my coaches provided for me when I was an athlete or when I was a student athlete. But yeah, I definitely think support is big, and we're just really grateful to have Gear Up and all that they do in our school then and what they continue to do now.
Mike Duffy, this is Randy Gardner. I just want to thank Olivia for being a part of this. Boy, that was a great message. And I also want to compliment Carlos Bing, who's the leader of the Gear Up program at the Department of Higher Education. It's great to have that kind of testimony, how that changed lives and improved lives and created additional opportunity and awareness for students. So thank you for that message. You've just reinforced what we already thought we knew about Carlos Bing and our Gear Up program. On a much smaller budget, however, now we're going to be able to do even more. So thank you very much for being a part of our day.
Of course.
So we've gotten through all the speakers a little bit, and now we can kind of engage in a little bit more conversation. As was mentioned in the slides, and I'll just kind of skip back to what we saw later in the slides, which is some of the functionalities of what we're going to be focusing on over the next year. It's the intent of the departments collectively, jointly, to work with school counselors, principals, and superintendents on the direct intervention. We have a solicitation on the street right now that is closes this Friday, but is on a rolling entry basis. It will run through August for some of the funding programs for nonprofits, ESCs, those who want to request some funding to be able to do intervention with students to increase FAFSA completion in the current academic cycle. And of course, we really want to emphasize the current academic year, trying to make the most of this opportunity, but then it will move seamlessly into the next academic year. And we're pretty confident that there will be enough funding that we'll be able to move into next academic year. We'll be engaging with all of these stakeholders, the school counselors and the principals and the superintendents, to talk about what our goal in the state of Ohio should be. We don't want to dictate that to you, but we want to have a conversation with you and figure out, is it a 5% increase? What is it that we want to achieve in terms of an increase in FAFSA completion? We're going to have professional development programs. We're going to be funding those with the GEAR money that we have right now. To talk about some of the changes that are happening at the federal level. Many of you may know, some of you may not know, that Congress decided to reform the FAFSA form. It's going to go from 105 questions down to approximately 36 questions in about 2 years. We know that we've made some strides with the Management Council, which runs the technology backbone for schools in Ohio, on the FAFSA data service. If you've used it in the past year, it's a lot more people are using it now. We've got like 1,500 school counselors across the state using it. If you're not already aware of that, I encourage you to contact the Management Council and get involved. You can see the data on your individual district, what your completion rates are. You can see other districts and where they're at. You can see how you're doing year over year. We want to just continue to upgrade these data systems and make them mobile friendly, make them the kind of thing that counselors really can just pull out the phone out of their pocket and do their job, and it can be as easy as it possibly can be. So all of that is going to be funded with this GEAR money. There's also an expectation in the proposed executive budget from the governor that sophomores who are sophomores today in high school, by the time they finish in 2 years in 2023, will have completed the FAFSA before they graduate. Parents will be able to opt out with a form similar to Louisiana. For those of you who are not familiar with Louisiana's policy, they established this several years ago, and they went from 44% completion rate in Louisiana in 2012, 2003, to now about 80% completion rate for FAFSA. They're seeing an increase in the number of students that are going to college or some kind of post-secondary option. And they're, of course, seeing much more increase in terms of Pell yield for their students as well. And we just had a conversation with Louisiana the other day at the Ohio Excels Attainment Coalition. And one of the officials was asked there, is there a single student in the state of Louisiana who did not graduate because of the expectation that students would complete the FAFSA before graduation? And she said no. They've not had a single student that hasn't graduated because parents just sign a form and that's how they get out of it. With that, we are moving into the Q&A portion of our agenda. I know that there have been some questions posted in the chat, and also it's open discussion. So anyone that's on the panel, and if you really want to talk about something that you think we haven't talked about, this would be a great time to talk about that. One of the questions here is, Does the August 31st deadline mean that the FAFSA completers must be enrolled by then, or can it be completed applications for enrollment past August 31st? I believe this is related to the solicitation. We have Jana Fornario from the department, who's our project manager for the current solicitation for the direct intervention with students on the line. Jana, can you answer that question?
I will do my best, and then I would invite whoever posted the question to ask clarifying questions if I'm not addressing it. So the intent is to have students complete the FAFSA by that deadline, because we know that there will be a new FAFSA that will emerge in October. So this is kind of our last push to get the students enrolled, completed, and hopefully enrolled in some form of post-secondary option past that deadline. That being said, the August 31st deadline speaks to the activities of the grant, right? So there's no particular expectation about whether a student does or does not roll and those sorts of pieces. We're just asking that the activities will be focused up to that August 31st deadline. And again, if it's okay, I'll speak to one other question, which is, what does it look like past that deadline? Again, we are intending to provide some longer term supports, right, that will focus on the upcoming academic year. But right now, the big push is how do we support these students who are graduating as they think about the options ahead.
Thanks, Jana. Another question that I see in the chat is, what focus is being directed towards Title I schools, given the disparity in FAFSA completion rates compared to non-Title I eligible schools? And I think we can speak to that because we've worked with the Management Council to identify a list of schools that have been most impacted on FAFSA completion by COVID. And it generally does have some correlation to Title I, although the list is not based off of Title I. Is that correct, Jana?
Yeah, so I think you'll see a pretty high representation of Title I schools on that list because we looked at two different factors. We looked at the percentage of completion. So looked at schools or districts that were below 40% completed by August 26th of 2020, and many of your Title I schools are represented on that list. And then we also looked at districts that saw a decrease of 3.5% or greater in the FAFSA completion if you look at this year relative to last year in January. And so again, you'll see a pretty strong representation of Title I schools, although I do want to commend some of our districts that have really taken innovative efforts to increase FAFSA completions, because there certainly are some outliers in terms of not every single Title I district or school might be represented wholly. But the other thing I would say is the solicitation also says there are plenty of schools and districts that we know are deserving of services that may not have qualified based on those cutoffs, and it does invite applicants to serve other schools and districts, particularly if they can explain whether there are low-income students, foster students, other types of students that are, in more vulnerable populations when we think about the impact of COVID. So again, we really appreciate the focus on those schools and particularly the students that most need services.
Another question that I see in the chat is, what consideration is being given to human resource capital given the student to counselor ratio? Items like FAFSA and subsequent fallout like verification require more than a simple transaction. And I think that's a great point. It was one that Michelle made emphatically in her comments today. It is the case that GEAR money is one-time federal money and does not fund operations at the district level. And so there is no proposal in the $2.85 million that we're currently releasing to fund, student to counselor ratio across the state. But we think that that's a completely legitimate conversation. If anybody wants to talk about that from the panel, feel free. I guess we have no comments on that right now. Our next question that I saw is, it's more of a comment. It looks like it was Jamie Nash to everyone. And thanks, Michelle, that our state needs to have a serious conversation about all options for all students, not just college. The mindset needs to change with all leaders, educators, counselors, administrators, and parents. Thank you for mentioning all those valuable options. And we hope that, we really extend the invitation to Bill Bussey today, because, and it was kind of, people didn't realize how important FAFSA completion and Pell was for students that were going in career technical pathways. And they don't just stop, obviously, in high school. They're going to continue on something in a post-secondary level. And Pell money is money that you do not have to repay. So that's funding your education. Otherwise, students generally are self-paying if they have to go through a program like that, right? And in the state of Ohio, depending on the pathway that you go you're not only getting Pell, but you're getting the Ohio College Opportunity Grant, which is our state-funded need-based aid. You're qualifying for private foundation scholarships. You're qualifying for financial aid that your institution may offer you, that they only offer you if you complete the FAFSA. So there's a lot of reasons why FAFSA completion matters. It's just kind of the universal skeleton key to all sorts of financial aid for post-secondary options.
Yeah, so my comment to Jamie is, a lot of that conversation has already taken place. I mean, obviously, all the different options are memorialized in the state strategic plan. So there's no one at the Department of Education that is of a college for all mindset. We embrace all the different options, and I think we've begun to penetrate, other aspects. The most challenging group is really parents, because I think the rhetoric is that every parent aspires for their student to go to college. So it's really breaking through some of that parental perspective and perception about college as being sort of that primary kind of gold standard that we have to get at. And frankly, I think a lot of the rhetoric when career technical education is presented as an alternative to college, I think it stymies some of those conversations. That's why a lot of times I say, hey, look, career technical education doesn't close the door to college. In fact, it's a great preparation for college, and it just adds to the options that students have.
If I finally,
go right ahead.
oh, thank you. If I might add to that, I think things have changed, and just by the invitation for me as the executive director of OTC shows that Mike and Jim Bennett and the Chancellor and everyone at ODHE is recognizing, and ODE is recognizing the importance of this option. Now, we've got a long ways to go. I think going back to the superintendent's comment just now, parents are possibly a hurdle in this, and who works with the parents and the student? It's mostly the guidance counselors and professionals at the local schools. But we have to have a mindset that we want to present all different options, and because not everyone's going to go to college. I am in career technical education for over 40 years now, and my thought was always been, as superintendent, adult ed director, whatever, that what's best for this individual student. We have to make sure that we offer all those options. I have nothing against college. I obviously went to college. My son did, my daughter did, but there's so many more that out there that it's not their best option. And we can all point out examples, and we can point out examples of people that went on to be very successful without a college degree. So we just need to, as Jamie said, we need to look at, make everyone from administrators, counselors, know what all the options are, and then inform those options to the students, and so that they know what to do, what they can do when they graduate.
If I could follow up on Bill Bussey's comments, very well said. I think about our effort here today in our conversation, and it's kind of a summary of what the governor has spoken about regarding the pandemic. We're in this together. And so that's kind of the theme. But let me say something that I said in committee a couple of weeks ago in the House, and probably will say so again this afternoon. And it's for some people, it might even be a little bit controversial, but it is more affordable today if you utilize the options we have provided. It is more affordable to get a post-secondary credential or degree today than it was 5 years ago in Ohio. The cost of post-secondary higher education is actually going down if you utilize all the options, all the tools, all the supports, all that we have provided or can provide for students. And so I think that's what's really important today is, if you have a desire, if you have a thought, if you have an issue that you'd like to pursue, try it. Give it a try. And you can't do that without completing the FAFSA to really know all of the available options before you.
Well, and I just kind of wanted to echo a little bit what everybody has said. And we, as a school counseling association, we've been asked, I think, by the governor's office once, the interpretation is that school counselors are pushing everybody to college. And that, in fact, is not the case. I think part of it is, kind of the old mindset of the guidance counselor, which was somebody who wasn't educated in the realms that we are and have those expertise, but we're just focused on scheduling and sending kids to college. So with the shift in school counseling and having all of those domains and a master's degree, in different areas. So I think that's where the shift is, and goes back to what Paolo said, of educating the whole child and kind of wrapping all those things around and starting back, as far with career exploration in the elementary and middle school, and then with the career tech and field experience and stuff in the high school. So I think, like you said, we're all in it together, and it's just going to take all the pieces to fit and move forward, and we'll get better.
That's a great point, Michelle. I know that Paolo mentioned this, the superintendent mentioned this, the chancellor mentioned this, but the lines that used to exist, the pathways, the very clear pathways that existed for students, and almost kind of where students were imposed upon to go into those pathways, those have broken down. It's become much more flexible and mix and match now, and stackable. So, for example, post-secondary enrollment option was not something that, other than very advanced kind of Gunner students, was really that embraced when I was in high school. But now College Credit Plus exists, and many students all the way down to 7th grade, but mostly, of course, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade are taking College Credit Plus courses. And then those can stack into, they could go for an associate's degree, and then you can go 2+2 to go to a 4-year degree if you want to. So all of these things, the credit and the articulation has been something that the Department of Higher Education's worked at as well, to make sure that there's reciprocity, that if you have military credit, you get college credit and all of those kinds of things. So there's way more pathways and options for students than there were in the past. We had a question, and I don't know if I can look up the link for this, but the FAFSA completion data site that I mentioned is Form Your Future, which is the FAFSA tracker. It is run by the National College Attainment Network. And it is a great resource. It's pretty much the go-to when Wall Street Journal or any other major news outlet is trying to look for which state is at what completion rate. I'll just mention very briefly that NCAN uses WICHE data, which sometimes doesn't match up with ODE data that we have for the state of Ohio. So sometimes our data at the management council level is a little bit more accurate on head count as we go through the school year. But that tells you how Ohio stacks against every other state. And it also has really good resources in Tableau where you can see year-to-year trends. You can see what's going on in high minority percentage high schools. For example, FAFSA completion across the state is down in excess of 14% at high minority high schools, but down less than 5% at low minority high schools across the state of Ohio. That speaks to some of what people had talked about Title I schools as well. Those percentages are also listed on the FAFSA tracker, and I believe it's 12% nationally for Title I schools that they're down, which is substantially more than the 9.1% aggregate rate across the nation. And more. Are all schools eligible to apply even if you aren't on the spreadsheet as a low or declining school? Jana can speak to this, but the solicitation is out to nonprofits and ESCs. So the S schools can be, I think, part of a collaborative with like an ESC or a nonprofit. Jana, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think you got that right, Mike. So again, we are encouraging partnerships across the list. So there are both eligible applicants and eligible school districts, but you can have partnerships with broader coalitions on both fronts. So it's welcome and encouraged.
Are ESCs able to subcontract with an OTC to assist local schools with FAFSA completion?
Subcontract has a very specific definition to me that I feel a little bit outside of my legal purview in addressing that, but I will again say partnerships are encouraged. Each applicant should have a lead applicant that meets the eligibility definitions provided in the solicitation. And a partnership would be highly encouraged. I won't use the word subcontract because I might be a little outside of my bounds in terms of understanding what precisely that says, but would encourage collaboration and working together with the lead fiscal agent that meets the eligibility criteria.
For the questions we can't answer today, I've discussed this in advance with Jana and with the department. We are going to take some of the questions from the chat and we will try to answer them as best possible. Maybe have to talk to our legal counsel and whatever we have to do to make sure that we're exactly accurate, but we'll be posting it on the links that you see here on the screen right now. We have a 3 to Get Ready campaign at the Ohio Department of Higher Education that's existed for some time. Of course, it's about all the things that are necessary as you get ready to leave high school and do whatever you're going to do next in life. We also have a specific subpage for FAFSA 21 that talks about the investment, the current solicitation, and all of the outreach that we're going to be doing and as we collaborate to do professional development and data system upgrades. We are almost at time. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I want to be respectful of people's time. I'm going to go through the questions here and just see if there's a couple more that we can answer.
There's one about FAFSA completion working in tandem with admissions.
Can you
reaction to that is, you know, of course, to Jana's point, it's all about partnerships, and admission offices, as much as anyone, are constantly tuned into ways to convince students that college is affordable and accessible. So I don't know that there would be anything that would not that would prevent sort of collaboration in terms of admission processes and completion efforts and FAFSA completion.
I did see one more in here, Jana. Can there be more than one grant awarded for the same region? For example, community college and access organization applying for 2 different grants.
There can be more than one grant awarded per region. You will see in the solicitation, it does indicate that we will consider geographic coverage before making final awards. But currently, we anticipate having funds to allow for multiple awards in the region. There are multiple requests.
And then the last question, I think we can just drive this home, is can you confirm the grant period for the FAFSA 21 project? I saw that all expenditures had to be completed by June 30th. And I know that you just provided clarification on that, I think, within the last 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. We have certainly heard from stakeholders that there's a need to continue services for a longer period of time, and there's a desire to have more ability to plan those activities for a longer period of time. So the deadline for expenditures has indeed been extended to August 31st to allow for that continued service. And again, we thank you for your feedback and helping us make sure that this grant can be as impactful as possible, because we are grateful to be partnering with you in this important work. And I would also say, please note, I know that we're coming up on the deadline for submitting, and you mentioned earlier, Mike, I do want to remind folks that in case that extension impacts their own grant development timeline, that we do have a deadline for first submission, but we will continue to accept applications on a rolling basis. So if that extension means that you need some more time on your side, certainly understand, and we welcome your applications when you're ready to submit. And again, thank you for your partnership.
Well, we are at time. We are going to take any questions that we were unable to answer today, and we're going to try to post answers on our website. We know that we have a lot more engagement to do with school counselors, principals, superintendents, the field that works with students every day. You're so important to us, and we want to partner with you to design the professional development and the data system upgrades that we want to fund for this. We think this is the most resources that the state's ever put into this. It's the first time the state has had a dedicated FAFSA campaign initiative that I'm aware of. And we really think that the time is now. This is an important time. We've got a national disruption with COVID and everything that's going on. We want to make sure that students maximize their opportunity for the future. And we're eager to partner with all of you. So thanks for joining us today. And we may have additional events in the future. So see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.